Okay. Uh, Welcome everyone to our Intro to Python workshop. And Khushi, you can go ahead and take it away.
Okay, hi, nice to meet all of you. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm a fourth year student at UC Irvine. I came in as an informatics major. Not sure if you guys have heard of that, but in informatics, informatics is a subset of software engineering that's primarily focused on front-end development, which includes UX and UI. So it's basically taking care of the user experience and the interface in the entire process of software engineering. I'm really excited to be teaching today's Intro to Python class, and let's get started. And definitely feel free to unmute yourself if you have any comments or questions, or message me in the chat box publicly or privately. And I'm definitely going to be asking a few questions along the way as well. So I would really appreciate it if you could reply to me on the chat box. Have any of you heard of IDEs? An IDE is an integrated development environment. Please let me know on the chat box so I know how much of it I should get in depth in. Okay, so there are a good amount of yeses and nos. So I'll quickly go over an IDE. That will be the first thing I'm going to cover. And then I'll also talk about variables and comments and introduce data types. Data types is a huge part of Python, and we won't have time to cover the entirety of it, but I think it would be great to dip our feet in. Okay, so an IDE is a platform for you to be able to submit the code on. You can start developing on an IDE. Let me show you what an IDE would look like. So there are a few types of IDEs. There's IntelliJ, VS Code, Sublime, Eclipse, and this is the one that I'll be using right now, Python Tutor. Do any of these names sound familiar to you? I'm personally a big fan of VS Code. I do all of my development on VS Code, but I know Sublime, IntelliJ, and PyCharm are also really big ones. Okay, awesome. So if all of you want to follow along, feel free to Google Python Tutor, and it should be the first thing that shows up. Let me pull it up so all of you can see it as well. So this is Python Tutor, and as an IDE, it's responsible for you to host your programming on. And I will be walking through some examples as we get started on different sections of our presentation. So on the IDE, you have the option to include comments, and comments are pieces of code that are not being ran or compiled. So an IDE compiles the program that you write, and it runs it to give you feedback or result of whatever you have written. So let me go over comments really quick. Sorry. So a comment is basically a line of code that is just for your reference. So if you're writing a function and you'd like to give yourself more information on the background of that function, but you don't want this to be a major part of your code, you would write a comment as a reference just for yourself. No one else will be able to see your comment. It won't show up when you run it unless you print the comment, or have your code shared with others, in which case they'd be able to see the comment. But for example, I'm going to be writing a function telling me to write my name, to print out my name. And so in the comment, I could make a note to myself, function to print my name. And then as I write my function, my comment will appear. It'll just be for me to keep track of the steps that I am doing for myself. Does anyone have any comments on comments or questions or thoughts they want to share?
Yeah, I just want to add that you can make multi-line comments using triple quotation marks. So
Yes,
that way you can,
yeah, thank you for pointing that out. You can, as he said, you can also write multi-line comments, which would basically be, say I want my function to say, my name is Khushi and this is my email address. My, as a comment, I could make a reference for myself saying print and then name and email. And so this is a multi-line comment, which is classified by 3 apostrophes before and after. And jumping into data types, there are quite a bit of different data types, and we won't be able to go in depth on all of them. But a few ones that we can cover right now are strings, integers, floats. We probably won't go into complex. That's not very relevant until you get much advanced in Python. And to quickly give you a brief statement on each of them before I go in depth. So a string is a text type. So when you declare a variable, you assign it to a data type. And the data types are classified between text, numeric, sequence, mapping, sets, and Booleans. So these variables can represent each of these different things. I know that may be a little difficult to understand right now, or might seem extremely abstract, but hopefully as I go more into the function or go more into each type, it'll be a lot more clearer. And definitely feel free to update the chat box if you have any questions. But there are 2 ways to set data types, and that could be typecasting or directly inputting the values that you want to represent with that variable. So if all of you can open up Python Tutor, and if you want to walk through this with me, I'd be happy to walk through data types on the IDE. So it might help you get a better understanding of how variables work. So if you type in x equals to hello world, and then print x, I'll do it down here, x equals to hello world, and print x. If you click live programming mode, this will give you an immediate response. There we go. And what I love most about Python Tutor is you can walk through each step on how it's being ran or how the compiler is interpreting it. So first, it sees that I've had a comment until my code begins. And so it doesn't execute that. And the next thing it sees is that I have x set to a value of hello world, and then I'm printing X. And so on the side, you can see they are setting X to hello world, which is them putting a variable name to a data type. And as it executes the last line, which is line 9, it prints hello world to return back to the user. Okay. And then another way to have hello world set to the variable X is to directly typecast it. And that means set the data type and in parentheses, give the information that the variable needs to determine this is a certain data type. If you try that with hello world as well, but typecasting it with a string and then printing X, like here. The same thing should be returned back to us. Another data type and for the purpose of typecasting, we'll get more into dictionaries later, but to typecast a dictionary, and a dictionary is basically a key stored with its value pair. So in the a key and the value with that is John, and age could be another key with the value of 36 as a reference to one individual object. One way to typecast that would be to say dict as a data type, and then in parentheses, name, which equals to the name that you want to insert. And I'm using John as an example, and age equals to 36. Is that running smoothly for everyone? Okay, and then, sorry, my keyboard is a little funky. Another thing that you guys I'd be happy to walk through with you. This is a practice that I have created to make sure that you have the hang of it. But here's X equals to 5 and print type X. You could try running this on Python here, and or you could try inserting into the chat box what you think this print statement will return back to us. Yeah, it would be an integer, and an integer is a numeric, was one of 3 important numeric types. An integer represents a whole number, while a float or a double or a complex would mean a floating point number, which could be with a decimal in place. Another practice item that I'll give you all 2 minutes for is create a string for your name in 2 different ways. And then when you do that, name the first variable name and the second variable my name. Try it out and let me know how that goes. Has that been running okay for everyone? Okay, great. Let's move on to the next part. So Boolean, how many of you have heard of Booleans? Okay, so a good amount of you. Awesome. To quickly recap it for all of you who know or understand what a Boolean is, it can represent only two values, true or false. And these values are representative by either the words true and false or by ones and zeros in binary. And so to go more into that, any number is considered true except zero. So zero is a key number or binary number representing false in all situations. Booleans are used to evaluate a value, and ones would represent true in binary, and zeros are all false. Any string is true unless it's empty. Any list, tuple, set, or dictionary are true except empty ones. So all empty values of any data type is always considered false. It means that it returns a null value when evaluated. So you can see in other terms here, all these empty values. So an empty list, set, dictionary, or string, or the number zero itself would mean false. So that should all be helpful for when you try typecasting again. And as we go further into conditions and conditional statements, this piece of information will be helpful. So one exclamation point means not. It contradicts the statement to mean not, or the opposite of what the statement would evaluate to normally. The double equal sign means we are determining if this condition is true, if it is equal on both ends, and an exclamation equal means not equal. So in our practice, let's try evaluating the following expressions. This is also something you can input into the chat box. How you evaluate the following expressions. We're going to go down this list one by one. So what do you think not, true, and true will give back to us? And to tell you more about this, everything inside the parentheses are determined first. So to break this down even more, true and true would give us true. And as Shivansh had put into the chat box, not true is false. So this entire statement comes out to false. Okay, that's for and. So and, if there's a false inside an and, then the statement will result as a false. However, if it's an or, the true is more powerful than the false. So if it's an or, if there is a true, then it will return back to us true. So let's try the second one. What do you think this will give us? True or false? True. Does this make sense for all of you? If I'm not explaining it in a very clear way, please let me know so I could try a different method. Okay, awesome. What about the third one? Not, false, and true. Okay, looks like you all have the gist of it. Yes, if to break this down, so false will give us false. So in an and, if there is a false in the statement, it is always false, which is the opposite of or. If there is a true in the statement and it's an or statement, then it's always true. But in this case, false and true is false. And then when we go outside the parentheses, not false is true. Okay, what about the last one? Okay, let's try number 2. This is definitely false. Sorry. So for number 2, this is all one line. And you would break this down at the and. So first determine this left half and the right half, and then this would be another and statement. So given both halves and what both values are for each half, what would the entirety of this line give us? Yes, so it is false on the left-hand side, true on the right-hand side. So this will give us a false because it's a false and true. So basically what's inside this not, this part, false and true, which is a false. Okay. Have you heard of a string type? Or I know I went into strings very, very, very briefly. Strings are a huge concept in Python and all coding, all programming languages. So I want to make sure that strings will be very clear to you by the end of this. So a string can be casted, or you can call any text strings using either a single quote or a double quote. So if I go back to Python tutor, edit this, double quote, if I change this to a single quote, and I don't have string here, Python will still identify a double quote to mean a series of characters. So when I program this, it's compiling, and at the end of this compile, it will return to us hello world once again. Okay, I'm gonna stay not full screen for a little bit because it's easier for me to navigate between Python tutor and my PowerPoint. But it is also possible to create multi-line strings. And this would mean using the double quote 3 times between when you want to start and when you want to end. We went over how to make comments using single quotes, but we can also do a multi-line string, which could be here. I like to go hiking. It is fun. And then, so you see Y is set to I like to go hiking, it is fun. If I print Y, it'll give us the multi-line string back to us the way that it was inputted. So I have a random space here before my I. So if I get rid of that, you can see that this is changed back to I like to go hiking. It is fun on 2 separate lines. Yeah, this is all Python. And this website, pythontutor.com, and using live mode as you input your code. Okay, so you can get characters by slicing. And slicing, so each character is assigned to an index. Thanks so much for putting the website in on the chat box. But each character is assigned to an index. So in this case, H is 0. I'm going to make this a comment. H's index is 0. E is 1. L is 2. The second L is 3, and so forth. And as we count indexes, the first character is always considered as a 0th index. We always start counting from the number 0 instead of 1 in all programming languages. Yes, so there is an option to use single quotes and double quotes because in other programming languages, single quotes and double quotes mean different things. So a single quote in C, for example, would mean a single character. So if I want to say, print the letter H itself, I'm going to add empty print statements in between. But if I want to print only the letter H, if I'm using a language like Java or C or C++, this single letter would be inside single quotes. And if it's a series of letters, I would be using a double quote. But in Python, there is no difference in using single quote or double quote. It's just formality. I do highly recommend following the code of conduct for strings in other programming languages. And I recommend using single quotes for single characters and double quotes for a series of, or a sequence of characters. And then back to this. Yeah, definitely. And as we go back to indexing, so this string would go up to index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to make a comment of 10 characters in my string. So I can start indexing by saying print x of 0. And this means that I want to print only the 0th character, which in my string would be an H. Or if I want to print the last character, I could do print x of 10, and it will give me the last character, which is the D. Does that make sense for everyone? Indexing is a huge part of Python, so I really want to make sure that this is understandable. Okay, that's really great. And another way that I could go and index my string. Sorry, I don't know why I deleted my string. Okay, never mind. I still have my string. Here it is, hello world. Another way that I can print the last character, which is D, is if I do x of -1. And D is the last character, so I can also start iterating backwards using -1, -2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So if I do x of -11, I will reach this first character, which is an H. So you could go both forward and backwards when going through a string and indexing its characters. Awesome. So that is a way to get a single character using an index. And using the same concept, we can slice a string. And the only difference between getting a single character and an array of characters, so I can get the letters WOR if I do print x of L is 3, 4, 5, 6. If I do from 6 to 9, x of 6 to 9. Oh, because I don't have the last packet. Okay, there we go. So here I have WOR, which is character 6, 7, and 8. But it won't reach character 9 or past that, and it will only start from character 6. So I'll have everything between including 6 less than 9. Okay, awesome. Another way, if I want to reach all the characters after 6 to the end of the string, I can leave it empty on this side of my colon. And that means I want everything from letter 6, from index 6 of my string to the end of my string. So this is the entirety of the word world. However, if I want to get hello, I can do print x of 0 to 5, and that gives me hello. And this empty space, this is index number 5. So I get everything between 0 less than index 5. So here I have hello. And definitely play around with this. I feel like this is a great tool that Python has that other languages complicate a lot more. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on indexing or slicing a string? So I'll move on to the next part. To concatenate strings, I have variable A set to hello world. I have variable B set to how are you. So I can put both of these variables together to create a single string, hello world, how are you? So if I run that here, I'm going to delete all of this and call this A. And then my next variable will be how are you? So if I want to put both of these strings into one single string, I create a third variable that I'm going to be calling x. And I will set x to A plus, and then an empty space in between, and then B. And here I'm going to print x. And I have hello world, how are you? To make this a little more user-friendly, I'm going to be doing x equals to A, comma, space and B. So hello world, how are you? To make this more shorthand, I don't have to create a third variable X. I can immediately print this inside my print statement and I commented out my variable X. This is more space efficient. So I do believe it's great to create more variables when you're beginning Python because there's a lot more information you can save and it's more visual to you. But as you progress, you'll be able to use the data that you need, such as A and then this new string that I created plus B, and immediately insert that into a function, which is print. So strings have a lot of methods included with them. And a lot of these methods are inside the string library, such as length. Let me show you how that works. So if I want to get the length of string A, I can print length of A. And here it gives me 11. Sorry, then this should be 11. Okay, there we go. I can print the length of X, which is both of my A and B together. Print length of X. Oh, I don't have X defined. Okay, there we go. And that's 25 for hello world, comma, space, how are you? Okay, and another one is dot upper. So there's dot upper and a dot lower. If I do A equals to A dot upper, and I print A after, let me add a new line here. So it converted my variable value of hello world to uppercase, which is a really cool string feature. Let's spend 5 minutes doing these practices on the side. These both, can you please do them on Python Tutor or whatever IDE you're using right now? I can also insert this into my Python Tutor after you all have a good go at it. So if by 11:44, some of you are stuck, I can also do this on my end. Oh, we're just going through both of these practice questions. If any of you start coming up with solutions that you'd like to share, feel free to insert it into the chat box and we could go over it together. I'd love to see how all of you would approach these questions. Sharance, if you'd like to unmute yourself, could you go over why it's a -2 and then colon to the end?
Yeah, so I look at it as -2 because it's sy is the last two characters of the string. So -2, that's why, and then colon, then I want it to be till the end of the string, so I left the other number to be blank.
Okay. So this is for the second question. Got it. Awesome. Yeah, feel free to share your solutions to the first and second practice question. Thank you, Shivansh. Does anyone have other solutions they'd like to share? Okay, if not, I can go over the first question, which was define a string my name with your name and then print the last 4 characters of the string. So my name is my variable and it will represent Khushi. This is my name. And if I want to print the last 4 characters, I would print my name and then a -4 to the end. And then that gives us USHI. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I would also love to go over questions if any of you have any. Why is it -4 is, okay, so my first question says to print the last 4 characters of the string. So there are 2 ways to do that. I chose to do from -4 to the end so that I reach only the last 4 numbers, or sorry, last 4 characters using the index -4. If I want to do that going in the forward direction, I would be able to do KHU, so 0, 1, 2 to the end, which is the same thing, which is also USHI in the 50%. Yeah, let me pull it up. Let's see. The type error, X is an invalid keyword argument for print. Oh, so let's see. Okay, Miriam, you have X equals to A plus quote comma, quote plus B. If you get rid of the x equals and print only A plus and then your string plus B, try that. It might help. I think the reason that there's an error in this is because you're defining a variable or redefining the variable x inside your print statement. So try that out and see if it works. I can work with you on that if you still have an issue. Does anyone else have any questions? It doesn't have to be about Python itself. It could be about computer science or software engineering or the career, anything related to the entirety of the tech world. Miriam, can you send another picture of how it looks like now? There are quite a few ways to incorporate machine learning in a website. It depends on the product that you're trying to build. I worked at Zillow last year. I'm not sure if all of you have heard of Zillow, but Zillow is a real estate company and they create brokerages. They help buyers and sellers rent or lease or sell or buy their homes. And Zillow used machine learning in quite a few ways. One way is to determine the market price of a home or a unit that's being rented or sold. Okay, it worked. That's great. Yeah, of course. So that's definitely one way to use machine learning is for the product itself. And the website itself would be a service for the product. So if I pull up Zillow, Zillow.com. So here, okay, let me do Seattle. And in Seattle, I'm going to pick up a house. So Zillow would determine the market value of this home on algorithms such as like the neighborhood that it's in, the schools close by, what the previous owners have bought it for, etc. There are many ways to determine the price of a home, and they would use machine learning to calculate. So if the market value is changing, machine learning is a huge way to understand how the market value is changing. And like given the assets that we have in this particular home, determine the price or value of this home or how much they will list it for. Another way that the internet or websites could use machine learning is exactly a website. This is more a feature of the iPhone, but if you have Face ID or Touch ID, that is all machine learning. It is the device, the system is grown to understand how the human works. So if I have face recognition on my phone, it can scan my eyes, nose, mouth, all my features, and puts together a profile for me. And this profile they have set up, every time I try to scan my face on my phone, it can tell this is Khushi. And that's because of a machine learning algorithm in which they're like, okay, all of these features belong to Khushi, and this is the face that we have developed using our algorithm for her, if that makes sense. And yes, JavaScript libraries are also helpful for machine learning. And they're actually, Python's a huge language to develop for machine learning. So I'm sure that if you choose to go into machine learning, there are definitely a lot of resources that I can send over. And Python's a good segue into that. A lot of larger corporations will use Python as Python libraries for ML. That's a really good question, Sarah. If I code a lot, is it easy to lose interest? So as a software engineer, coding is 100% of what I do. It's actually, so how a day in my life would go is I would start work at 9 a.m. I'd have meetings set up throughout my day from 9 to 5. And in between meetings, it's all coding. The meetings will last maybe 30 minutes each. And when I'm not in the meeting, I'm coding. And yes, it is easy to lose interest if you don't have a good balance between work and the rest of your life. But if you choose to go into software and as a career, software or engineering, then you probably have the interest itself for code. Sometimes it is easy to get distracted or get burnt out. In that case, that like for coders, that usually means it's time for you to take a break, get your mind on something else, and then come back to your code later. But yeah, I think if you're committed to your career, if you enjoy it, it's a lot harder to lose interest. But that's a really great question. I'm not sure if I answered it in the way that you were looking for. Definitely ask follow-up questions if I'm not covering any information. All of you can also unmute yourself to ask questions. There are both. So it depends. All of this depends on the project and the team that you're working with. I'm working for a company called Convoy right now, and it's a trucking company. It's basically an Uber created to set up truckers with so for example, if you want to send a shipment to Starbucks from a manufacturing unit, Convoy would be the middleman to determine this trucker is around the area and is able to pick up the shipment to deliver it to the Starbucks. And in my team right now, as an intern, I get a new project to program with each time I finished one. I finish a project. My next project isn't necessarily built on the project I'm currently working in. I have the option to build upon it. So a lot of front-end developers who are working with React or HTML, JavaScript, a lot of their code builds on each other. So once they finish one project, which could be to create a component, if I go back to Zillow, say one of their tasks was to create this navigation bar. So after they be to open one of these links and navigate to wherever this will take us. So that's an example of a project that builds on the past project, but it definitely depends on where the programmer wants to take it. And all of you are more than, like, I am so happy to be in touch with all of you. If you have any questions for Python or software engineering, let me send my email to the Slack channel. Okay, my email is khushi10@gmail.com. Send or an email about any questions that you may have, and for all of your emails that I gather, I can definitely send over resources in terms of careers in software, machine learning, etc. And further information, I can share my slides and more on Python. So the interview that I had for Zillow, a lot of questions were based on algorithms. So algorithms is another. So data types is the stepping stone towards algorithms. After you have a mastery of data types, algorithms will be made a lot more straightforward. And algorithms could be, so there's something called data structures, and a data structure is a list. It could be a list, tuple, range, dictionary, etc. There are like more than 10 ways to create data structures, and it's how you gather information and collect them in one single object. So in a list, you could save many different in a list you could save many different numbers or strings, all of the same data type. You collect all of this information in one structure, and same with a dictionary and a tuple. A lot of questions for interviews are based on data types and data structures. Yes, and you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Khushi Valia. Here, I go to UCI, so if you have that information up on LinkedIn, you'll definitely be able to find me, and I'd love to connect with all of you. I do know Java, and yeah, stacks, queues, linked lists, they're all examples of data structures. Yeah, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Unfortunately, I don't use Discord. I check Discord like once every 3 or 4 months, so it's not the best way for you to reach me. I check email and LinkedIn pretty often, so definitely reach out to me there, and I can get back to you as soon as possible if you have any questions or want to connect or anything else. Okay, awesome. If there are no more questions or thoughts to share, we can wrap this up. Thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed being here. Yeah, and I'd love to keep in touch. So hopefully I will see your messages or an email or LinkedIn. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Khushi, for taking your time to speak to us about Python and like some insights about your career as a software engineer.
Of course.
So,
Thank you for
yeah.
inviting me.
We'll send out the slides on our Discord and also the recording. So if you guys want to like refer back to it later, you can always do that. Yeah. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.